Are you hungry? There's a good chance you are, or maybe you're even eating right now. Regardless, food is often on the forefront of our minds. In fact, the average American spends 67 minutes per day eating or drinking. But how is something as essential as food represented in video games? The idea of food in a video game sounds kind of silly at first. Video game characters do not technically need to eat. They aren't alive, and if anything, they technically just eat electricity. But food is an integral part of our lives, and video games will mirror and attempt to replicate real life in nearly all aspects. There are, in my opinion, 4 different ways we interact with food in real life: for survival, improvement, economically, and joy. Video games contain representations for each of these aspects. To start, we have games where eating food is one of the crucial mechanics of the game. Generally, these are survival games where you have to manage hunger levels. Games like Minecraft or The Forest. You hunt local wildlife, forage, or even farm to sustain yourself. If you do not eat, you will die. So much of what makes these games interesting is figuring out how you will survive, and food is a crucial aspect of what keeps you alive. This concept is pretty ingrained in our instincts as human beings. However, I think most people, at least in first world countries, are generally pretty far removed from this type of experience. So the novelty of it is part of what makes it interesting to play. Next are games where food is technically optional, but engaging with the food mechanics will greatly improve your success. Games like Monster Hunter, Pokemon, or most RPGs.
I like my cheese drippy, bro.
You can find or even craft food items in these games, and eating them will generally give your character a boost in stats or health. Any game with a potion that heals you or recovers one of your stats I would also consider food, or at least a drink. For example, Estus flasks in Dark Souls. This is probably the most common way food and drinks are represented in video games. Another example is the food in Monster Hunter. In this game, you use the ingredients you find to make meals before heading off on expeditions. Depending on the meal, you can have different stat boosts that can synergize with the rest of your build. I would say that the parallel to the real world here would be people who are trying to improve their real life stats using food. Athletes who prepare high protein meals, or sick people who drink cough syrup. Food is used here to supplement and improve, rather than as a necessary element of survival. Next, we have video games focused on food and cooking as a business. These are games like Cooking Mama or Papa's Pizzeria. The funny thing is, your character generally never eats the food you cook. However, the NPCs or customers within the game do. These games look at food from an economical perspective, where it's not really about food, but more so the money gained from it. Generally, food here could be replaced with anything else that could be sold, and the game would not significantly change. For example, I used to play a game called Jacksmith, where it takes the idea of Papa's Pizzeria but applies it to blacksmithing. So the focus with these games is more on business, but using food as a vector for that. Finally, we have games that do technically include food, but it offers no substantive benefit and is not part of the game's core gameplay loop. Similar to how many games let you pet a dog, some games let you eat food in a similar way. You press a button and an animation is performed. For example, in Hogwarts Legacy, there are many areas where you can interact with the environment, including eating snacks. In these cases, food isn't necessary or serving any purpose other than for the pure enjoyment of the player. Just like when you go out to eat or have one of your favorite snacks, the purpose in this case is just fun. Most games do feature at least one of the food mechanics discussed in this video. And the funny thing is, it's actually more weird for a game not to have any food in it at all. I suppose that makes sense, as food is an integral part of our real daily lives. People can have many different attitudes surrounding the food they eat. Food is necessary for survival, it can be used to heal and improve ourselves. Food is how many people make their livelihood, and sometimes, food is just great to eat. In our real lives, it serves many purposes, and I find it interesting how that is reflected in the world of video games. All this talk of food has sure made me hungry. So while we eat a lot of food in video games, make sure you're taking care of yourself and eating food in the real world too.